How many steps are optimal for health? To address that, let's take a look at this recently published paper that was a meta-analysis of 11 studies that included more than 111,000 people. And jumping straight into the data, we've got steps per day on the x-axis, which raises the question, how are steps quantified? Objective step counting devices were used, which were worn on the wrist and on the hip. All right, so back to the data. On the y-axis, we've got the adjusted hazard ratio for all-cause mortality. In other words, risk of death for all causes. And then when compared with people who walked 2,000 steps per day, as step counts increased, all-cause mortality risk was lower. It was significantly reduced, with an optimal dose being defined at about 8,800 steps per day. Now, that was defined as an optimal dose because at higher step counts, we can see that there was only a marginal lowering, or step counts above 8,800 per day was only associated with a marginal reduction for all-cause mortality risk. And we can see that illustrated here on this table. In the middle, we've got steps per day, and on the right, we've got the adjusted hazard ratio with the 95% confidence interval. So just as a quick mention, what that actually means. So the data in parentheses is the 95% confidence interval. When it's lower than 1, a hazard ratio of 1 in this case, it's a significant association. So you can see for all three of the data in this table, the 95% confidence interval is completely below 1, so each of these are significant associations. So first, when looking at the risk reduction for 16,000 steps, we can see that the adjusted hazard ratio is 0.35, so we subtract that from a hazard ratio of 1 to get a 65% lower risk of death for all causes for people who walk 16,000 steps per day. For what was defined as the optimum dose, though, about 8,800 steps per day, we can see that the adjusted hazard ratio was 0.4. So subtracting that from a hazard ratio of 1 yields a 60% reduction, or a 60% lower risk of death for all causes for people who walked 8,800 steps per day. In other words, walking an additional 7,000 steps above 8,800 was only associated with a 5% lower risk of death for all causes. That's why the authors of this meta-analysis defined 8,800 steps as the quote-unquote optimal dose, because walking an additional 3.5 miles to gain a 5% lower risk of death for all cause mortality may not be as optimal as walking 8,800 steps. All right, so also minimum dose, we can see that was identified at 2,500 steps. So in other words, relative to people who walked 2,000 steps per day, getting an additional 500 steps per day was associated with an 8% lower risk of death for all causes. All right, but is this just healthy user bias? Do people who walk more just have generally healthier lifestyles, and that's what could explain this association for a lower risk of death for all causes? So to account for that, at least 7 of the 11 studies included in their model adjustment for education level, with the expectation that people who have higher levels of education may walk more. Comorbidities were included in the model in 8 of the 11 studies, so people who have more chronic health conditions may be more likely to walk less. Alcohol status was adjusted in 9 of the 11 studies, so excessive alcohol use, probably the expectation would be less step counts. And then 10 of the 11 studies adjusted for age, BMI, sex, and smoking status. But notably absent from this list is diet quality. In other words, how much of the association for step counts with risk of death for all causes is explained by just generally healthier diets, less ultra-processed food intake. None of the 11 studies adjusted for diet quality, so hopefully future iterations of studies like this will include dietary quality as an adjustment variable in their model. All right, that's all for now. If you're interested in more about my attempts to biohack aging, check us out on Patreon. And before you go, we've got a whole bunch of discount links and merch that you may be interested in, including discount links for epigenetic testing, NAD quantification, oral microbiome composition, at-home metabolomics, at-home blood testing with SciFox Health, which includes ApoB, green tea, diet tracking, or if you'd like to support the channel, you can do that with the website Buy Me a Coffee. We've also got merch, so if you're interested in wearing the ConquerAging or Diet Trying brand, as I've got on here, that link and all of the other links will be in the video's description. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Have a great day.